Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to OBR Weekly. It's Wednesday, 7 o'clock, so we're here to talk Cleveland Browns. He's the legend, I'm the web dork. How's it going, Fred?
Going pretty good.
Well, that's good to hear. It's good to hear. Have you adjusted to all the news and stuff that came out of the league owners meeting? It was just a bevy of, I don't know, Haslam saying things and whatnot. Just you know, any impressions from the
Well,
league
I
meetings?
mean, we don't hear from the Haslams very often. The last time we heard from them was down on the second, I think the second, maybe third day of Greenbrier, West Virginia last summer, right after they gave Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski new contracts, and everything was hunky dory then. Coming off
Yeah,
11-6 season, beginning of a very exciting anticipated 2024 season. We all know how that turned out, but
yeah,
hadn't really heard from them since. A lot been going on since, not only with the stadium and all those type of things, but Miles Garrett demanding a trade, a team going 3-14, Deshaun Watson being a complete disaster. At that time, everybody was expecting, him to bounce back, have a
yeah.
great year. So I think that the most noteworthy, was him, what he called the elephant in the room, um, because really nobody else can address it but ownership. I mean,
Right.
Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, I've been saying this, since towards the end of last season. They were moving on from Deshaun Watson. It was obvious. But Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski used the injury situation to table any talks. Oh, we got to wait till he gets healthy before we can talk about Deshaun. The number one thing is we got to get Deshaun healthy. Well, by the time he was hurt, he had already proven that he was a disaster.
Mm,
So there was really no waiting for him to get healthy. The only thing interesting, if you owed a guy 46 million or more, you and he was your employee, you probably wouldn't completely trash him, if he was still on your payroll. And
right.
that's what Jimmy Haslam did. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
kind of knows and expected that, but I guess to the way he came right out very plainly, and said in no uncertain terms, a big swing and a miss, and it set us way back. We're trying to get out from the hole. So I think those are the biggest things. The stuff from Stefanski, Kevin, and Andrew Berry was just GM speak, coach speak.
Yeah.
Um, Probably get into some of the specifics, but they
Sure.
spent a lot of time praising Kenny Pickett and without really saying a whole lot
Right.
other things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the headlines were made by the Haslams, and I think I give them credit. They get criticized for everything, and some of it's their own doing. But I mean, what are they supposed to say? Are they supposed to just not say anything? Are they supposed to talk like Stefanski and Barry and go, "Oh yeah, we're going to see how he does when he comes back," from his second torn
Right.
Achilles? So I give him credit for hitting it head on, and deflecting it and taking. I don't think it's all on them. I'm pretty certain that Andrew Berry went to him and said, "Hey, if we could get this guy, what do you think?"
Mm,
And then sure, they had to sign off on the money and go back to him after they were turned down. But yeah, I don't think that it was all on the owners.
yeah, absolutely. And we will get into that as we get through the program. We'll go through anything of any relevance that was said. We'll dig into it here in just a second. If you are joining us via the YouTube or Twitch chat rooms, please feel free to sound off in there. We are looking to your questions and your comments really for the whole back half of the show. We like to talk about what it is that you want to talk about. I've got a couple of topics here, per usual, that Fred and I are going to go through, but we're already getting some comments in there from Twitch and YouTube. If you're watching on X, as many people are, feel free to jump into our YouTube and Twitch chat rooms and join the fun. That's where the action is during the course of the program. So let's dig into the details coming out of the NFL Despots meeting. Here's a quote from Jimmy Haslam. He says, "We took a big swing and miss on Deshaun. We thought we had the quarterback. We didn't. We gave up a lot of draft picks to get him. So we've got to dig ourselves out of that hole. It was an entire organization decision, and it ends with D and I. So hold us accountable." Well, that's a nice thought, but how do you hold an owner accountable, Fred? You know, what do we do? Okay, we'll go buy tickets some more. I don't know how we deal with an accountability at the ownership level.
Not much you can do. I mean, people, try to, you can boycott without buying tickets and do what many did. They left the Browns fandom, but as we saw, those tickets were quickly scarfed up by people on a waiting list, and the NFL knows that. That's really, if you can get yourself into one of those 32 spots owning a team, you're pretty, unless your name's Art Modell, you can
Mm,
pretty much make a pretty good living and not have to worry about mistakes and consequences along the way.
yeah, yeah. It is, as I wrote this morning, sort of modern royalty. You have a business guarantee to make money. You can't be fired, and it gets handed down from father to son to daughter or whatever. Um, just like royals hand off their titles. But at least Jimmy Haslam has taken some accountability. Now, we already got a little bit of a reaction from Deshaun, didn't we, Fred? He made a rather cryptic remark on Instagram about he's, built for this sort of nonsense. Um, Anything else that we can expect? How long does Deshaun stay on the roster? For Pete's sake. I mean, he pretty much has to until next year, right?
I think it's the new league year, March of 26 is where you start getting some relief. Um, I you'd have to go through Jack. He's got it on the timeline, but there's something like March of 26. So about a year from now, after the new year starts, then you can cut him if you want to, and and take the dead cap hit, for the next 3 or 4 years, but you're done paying him the money, and so it's just really dead cap. So I assume by this time next year, he will be a free agent. But yeah, again, that's what I said. I thought it was a little um, bold to be that direct because I don't expect to really have an interview setting with Deshaun because they don't do so with injured players.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he'll ever be activated this year. I mean, that would be very awkward,
Yeah,
I think. So,
yeah,
they probably do like Houston just said, hey, stay away. We don't want you in the, Kevin Stefanski said that he saw him. He'd been rehabbing, the last time we talked to him that Watson was in the building rehabbing. So
mm-hmm.
I don't know if he still is, but quite interesting all the way around. But
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
see his comments. So I
yeah,
would think you would have something to say, but I don't know.
yeah. Exactly. Well, it is. I think you use the word awkward. It is very awkward at this point in time. The owner has written off the $240 million quarterback. And Jimmy Haslam used to say candidly a lot, candidly this, candidly that. Well, he was very candid, and it's up to Browns fans how we deal with that. Everyone will deal with it sort of individually differently, but I personally am glad to see the team sort of close the book on this and acknowledge that they have to move on. Um, and part of that moving on is getting another quarterback. The team, of course, has only Kenny Pickett on the roster right now. We'll talk about him here in just a little bit. But Fred, you and I talked a lot about Kevin Stefanski being the key guy in terms of selection of the quarterback. That we would love to see him go out and demand whichever free agent or rookie or whoever he thinks best fits his offense. And at this point, he's not really doing that. As you can see from the quote here, he says, I'm not ready to turn the card in. I think the whole process is really important to me and to us. And there's still quarterbacks we haven't seen throw live. I like a lot of guys in the class, blah, 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 blah. He ends up by saying, so there will be no standing on tables. These are outstanding football players. So once again, it's all process and consensus and, all that sort of stuff from Stefanski. I guess my question to you is, are you a little disappointed in that? Wouldn't you like to see him, sort of take a central role here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, that's his personality, that's his deal. I
Mm-hmm.
believe if the Browns had the number one pick in the draft and Peyton Manning was sitting there, that he would give you the same type answer.
Right.
Um, he just, you know, my opinion is he's a great guy, but he is not an alpha mentality or a personality. Like there's a lot of NFL head coaches that are that, that will really, pound the table and be very.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him the very question at the combine, with such an important thing. You've been here now 5 years. You're comfortable. Organization knows you, believes in you. Why wouldn't you be the guy making the decision on the quarterback? That seems to be in your wheelhouse. And he immediately went into well, we work together. It's a, complete process. I get everybody's opinion, but bottom line is this is what I want. And so, that could be how it is. But he comes
Mm-hmm.
across as, I'll just take whatever they give me. I'll give my
Right.
input, but hey, I don't know. I don't, or he doesn't feel that confident in the evaluation process himself. I don't know. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
some guys that they might be dead wrong, but they look and go, that's what I want. That's who I want.
Right.
He
Right.
seems to be like he can be talked into, whoever. And I don't know if that's true or not, but um he comes across as not really going hard after. You saw that he went and saw Jackson Dart when the rest of them went with Abdul Carter. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a pound the table thing, but um it shows that he had some direct interest, in that quarterback, I would say. So I don't know how it all shake out, but I just think he's got the nice phrases in that, but you just don't really know where he really stands. He's kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth, and I mean that's good for sometimes as a head coach or general manager before the draft. But you would like a little more definitive. I mean, you could look down the quotes. I think every top quarterback he's been asked about, and it's the same with everybody. Like, oh, they're
All
great,
right.
they're outstanding young men, and it's like, but when it comes to no names, just picking who you want, why can't you just say, there is somebody I really want, and I'm going to make my voice, heard.
And he should, by all by all standards, he should be the ostensibly the best offensive mind in the building, right? I mean, he was the offensive coordinator of the Vikings. He was a quarterback coach. He elevated to head coach. He calls the plays. Shouldn't he, be the guy that other people turn to say, is this the guy? Will this guy work? But
Do you think that's
again,
the case?
do I think it's the case? I think that there should be some of that. If the organization makes any logical sense at all, they should put the most knowledgeable offensive mind on the clock, when it comes to time to pick a quarterback. I don't know if that's what they do, but I would think that's what they should do, right, Fred?
Well, that's what we've been talking about. I mean, if you believe in him and that's the most important position and that's who you work most closely with,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's who should be having, I'm not saying 100% input, but I would think that it'd be more than 50%. I think it would be close to 75, 80% of his weight on what he would like to do as opposed to just one of the guys in the room.
Yeah, yeah. You would think. You would think. Well, Chef Brian K has made it, everyone. So hi, Chef. How you doing? Good to see you here, per usual. Show starts at 7, not 7:15. Make sure you get in here on time. I want to see you do some arm curls with Core Home Fitness and Repentance. But it's good to have you here as always.
That's because he knows you bloviate to start the show. And
I do. I do. I bloviate to start the day. I bloviate to start the show. And can't be blamed for trying to miss a bloviation, that's for sure. Slide number 3. Brown's not trading up to number 1, according to Andrew Berry. He says that it's unlikely that the team trades up to number 1, but he also says we're pretty much open to anything that could be advantageous to us, which is a very Andrew Berry-like thing to say. Do you believe this at all, Fred? Or do you think it's just there to bring the Titans back down to earth with their expectations?
well, I think there's a little gamesmanship in there. I mean, I did hear Jimmy Haslam said that he asked Andrew, about that comment. And, you know, I'm sure they wouldn't be doing their homework or due diligence if they haven't had talks with the Titans on what it would take. And they may have said, we want 3 first round or we want 2 first rounds or something.
Mm,
And, and even with a little more back and forth, still came away that that's where they left it. And I do think maybe he's trying to close the door so they, in case they want to come back to him and said, wait a minute, would you do it for this?
right.
And it all comes back to their evaluation of Cam Ward, and Shador Sanders and Jackson Dart. We've said this from the beginning, is that if they feel that Ward is head and shoulders above everybody else, and he is the only franchise quarterback in this draft, and there's a chance you could get him, why wouldn't you move heaven and earth to get him? Because
Yeah.
that's the biggest problem with this team, especially in the situation they're in now. I thought and I proposed, and I don't know how hard they went after it, but to get that veteran starting quarterback in here so you weren't under the gun to have to pick one with the second pick. And that hasn't come to fruition. So right now you're sitting here, and that's why I think you got some of the comments you got coming out of the meetings. But
Mm,
yeah, if the Titans come back and said, we will take this, what you offered, in the first place, yeah, then they do it. But I think the parameters were too high.
yeah.
And he's just saying, nobody's ever done it. Nobody in the history of the NFL's went from 2 to 1. So why would we be the first?
Exactly.
And,
It's,
and
it's,
that's the idea of, if the Titans are still not completely sold on Ward, then that draws into the question, is he maybe not as good as it's appearing, or he's just the top of a weak class,
mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll find out in a few weeks, obviously, but um, it's more to me the separation of Sanders, Dart, Milrow, whoever else you want to throw in there, Shuck, because if they feel like Ward is going number one
Mm,
and Sanders and Dart are pretty close, or the other guys, and they don't feel that strongly about them, then then why wouldn't you just stay and take the best player and then go from there?
right, right. Alec asks, didn't the Saints trade up to get Ricky Williams? They did, but I thought that they were like eighth in the draft. They were down a little bit. They had to give up their entire draft to get that to trade up to number one. So I think they were a little bit further down.
Yeah, they weren't
Um,
number two.
yeah, they weren't number two. But Ditka's an example of a guy who will call, with the shot that, he really wanted Ricky Williams and he did whatever was necessary to get him. The Cleveland Browns, seem to be telling the Titans, get real. We're not going to give you 2 first-round draft picks to move up one spot. Be a little bit more realistic, I think is what Andrew Berry is saying. So, with that, we have another question, which is becoming increasingly evident as the Cleveland Browns sort of lackadaisically attack the quarterback position, I guess you could say. People are saying this does not look like a team in a hurry. Jimmy Haslam's not giving the impression that he's demanding that his front office turn it all around in 2025, and the front office is not acting like that. They're not acting like we absolutely have to make the playoffs this year to keep our jobs. Fred, do the Browns look like a team that's prepared to withstand another rough year in order maybe to get Arch Manning or somebody like that in 2026?
Well, as they stand right now, they sure do. I think that was one of the biggest things. I think I wrote about it about Haslam is that he said we're not going to force the pick at number 2 to get the quarterback, and we're going to be patient even if it takes a year or two
Mm-hmm.
to find that guy. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that the message is very clear to Barry and Stefanski that you're not going to be fired if we have another bad year, because
Mm-hmm.
whether they went to him and said, look, this is the reality. We know we need to get a quarterback, but these guys aren't the answer. So we have to look elsewhere. We got to figure out. And if we just take a guy to take a guy, we're going to be right back in the same boat, you know, hereafter. Again, talking out of both sides of their mouth. We'll see what they do. But Kevin Stefanski said he really likes the quarterbacks in this draft. Well, which one? Which ones?
Right.
That's a plural. And so their actions haven't come about, but their actions off the quarterback spot before the draft are not appearing that they're almost taking the approach you would think, just like the Titans haven't done much at quarterback, that they're taking Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders, one of them guys. And that's why they're not worried about it. The Browns haven't really addressed the quarterback position. I wouldn't say seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably wrong now because of the story I wrote about it, but I still don't think they've addressed it seriously. You needed to get a solid, proven veteran starter. If you were going to want to be competitive this year, that's what they told
Mm-hmm.
us. They were
Yep.
going to compete for the playoffs. Maybe that was just talk, but I don't see how you feel like you've done anything really, especially at quarterback, to get you moving down the road any. And so they're acting like, okay, we'll take whoever the Titans don't. And that still could be what they do,
Mm-hmm.
but you're getting more and more as we get closer. I don't know how you put it, get it, but you get a drift that they're not going to take a quarterback at 2.
Right.
That's the prevailing thought now. So it always seems as it gets closer to draft, especially at least in the top 3 or 4 picks, you got a really good idea what's going to happen. But I don't know. I mean, that's where that's why in my projection, even though I didn't necessarily was sold on Shador Sanders that they would take him because they haven't done anything really to address quarterback. And if you come out of
Hmm.
the draft without a quarterback, a starting quarterback, then what are you going to do? And I
Yeah.
think we're already starting to get the idea what they might do.
Yeah, Kevin Stefanski once again talking about developing players. We don't look at them as finished products. We look at them as terms of whether they can take a jump, whether we can develop them. Things like that. It doesn't sound like a guy in a hurry. Chef Brian K makes the very good point. Do we know that Arch is even the guy yet? I would say no, we don't. We know that expectations are very, very high, but he hasn't proven it. And you don't even know if he's going to. I mean, he's a junior. He could stay at Texas for 2 years. So don't put too much in that basket. But there are a number of quarterbacks who are, potentially interesting.
That would be a
Just,
fireable offense to me, is if you are really selling the owner that we'll get a quarterback next year.
yeah.
I mean, I don't care if you're, I mean, we know how painful it was going through the winless year, they did all that to get those, tank to get, the sustained success. You ended up with Baker Mayfield. Okay. Now he's
Hmm.
proven to be all right, but he's not a superstar. He's not Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. And, you did everything to try to get a quarterback like that. And look how it turned out. You got some nice players, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, David Njoku, but you didn't win the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
And I think that's ridiculous to try to lose. You're going to have to definitely have the number 1 pick in the draft to get the best quarterback in the draft. I don't
Sure.
care. You can look at this year. Let's say, Cam Ward was Peyton Manning. You still would have missed out
Yeah.
because that guy's going to get picked number 1 overall. You can't count on there being 2. And I don't even know if this guy, Manning, just because his name's Manning, it's not Peyton's son. It's not Eli's son. It's
Right.
the other brother's son. That doesn't mean that he's going to be a superstar in the NFL because his name's Manning. He's going to
Right.
get more chances. But I think that's a fool's errand to chase a future number 1 pick. I mean, I've said this before. Matt Barkley, I think his name, he chose to stay at USC. They said he will be the number 1 pick in the draft next year because he stayed in school. When he came out the next year, he was a 4th-round pick of the Eagles.
Yeah.
And he never did anything with his career. You gotta get a guy when you can get a guy, and you're constantly on the lookout for that quarterback. And so because it's not like the old days where the number 1 pick in the draft becomes the highest paid player in the NFL. I mean,
Hmm.
believe it or not, I think Sam Bradford was the last one of those. They got some sense, and now it's a little more of a structured deal. So if you miss on that quarterback, you're going to give them more time, but you can move on from them way easier than you could from a Deshaun Watson or one of these free agent quarterbacks that, the top 10, what they're getting paid. So
Right.
I think you got to measure it. And if you feel that Ward, if he's available, or Sanders or Dart, Milrow, whatever, are better than anything you got, then, or that you have the potential to get, you get the quarterback. And
Hmm.
if you draft him number 2, you probably will start him from the beginning.
Right.
That's why Kirk Cousins now is not in play, because he doesn't want the Browns to take a quarterback at number 2 and then he gets benched like he did with Penix last year.
Right.
So if you're pulling for Kirk Cousins, which I feel is your best chance to have a winning team this year,
Hmm.
a few things have to happen. You need to draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter And so he would want to come here to be the starting quarterback. And you also, I think don't you have to pull for Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers?
Hmm.
Because if he doesn't sign with the Steelers, believe it or not, are in worse position than the Browns at quarterback right
Right.
now because there's nobody available, other than the same guys we're talking about, Joe Flacco, Carson Wentz, and they have the 21st pick in the draft. So they
Right.
can't take a guy, at number 2. So if Rodgers goes to the Steelers, then there's really only one opening, and Cousins, I believe, would waive his no trade clause, especially if the Browns don't draft a quarterback at number 2, and you have him coming in to start or battle with Kenny Pickett. And then you
Right.
can develop Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe or Will Howard or somebody like that. That's what I see as a plausible option.
Assuming the Browns take Carter or Hunter with pick number 2, and you're looking at later in the draft to get Dart or Milrow or somebody else. Do you see the Browns trading up into the first round just so that they can have that 5-year contract for the quarterback instead of a 4-year contract, as with
I
a
don't think it's
second?
that big of a deal. It's
Mm-hmm.
really, I if you really like a Dart or a Milrow or Shador Sanders, I I think it's going to be tough to get them. Just the way the NFL goes. I mean, I could see the Saints taking a guy like Jackson Dart at 9,
Mm-hmm.
or the Steelers. They're going to draft Milrow or Dart or somebody, especially even if they get Rodgers, if they're there. So I think you're going to have to get up to in front of the Steelers, and that's going to cost you as well. So I really don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't know how they feel about these guys, and if they take Sanders, then we'll know all along they liked him. That's who they were sold on. If it wasn't Ward, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll
Yes.
see. But um, yeah, I think as always happens, quarterbacks get gobbled up, and you can't go in saying we're going to trade back up and get the guy we want. In a perfect world, yes, but you got a lot of different teams trying to do the same thing. They're all
Yeah.
looking for the quarterback.
Yep. Yep. And they are scattered throughout the first round. First round is going to be very exciting. We will be covering it live like we always do in the 2025 Draft Cave. We will be live throughout the draft on Thursday, Friday, and all day on Saturday, except for Fred. Fred will not be there for the latter part of the 7th round. Darn it all, you're going to miss pick number 264 or whatever. But oh well, we'll have to live with that. All right, let's go on to the next slide. And that is just a quick mention that the AAFC titles and championships and autogram statistics and so on and so forth now officially absorbed into NFL history. So the Browns now have what 7 or 8 championships, if you include the AAFC championships that they won year in and year out during that particular era. But Fred, do you think this changes the narrative at all? The Browns have never been to the Super Bowl, and yeah, they were great in the 1940s and early 1950s, but
No, it's nice for the Browns and everything for their, little social medias and all those things. But just like
mm,
my kids or grandkids, when I say, well, the Browns and the Lions were the dynasty, in the 50s, every year they played for the championship. And now neither of them been in the Super Bowl. They
right,
yawn and, it's useless information to them. It's kind of like, some major political story that was completely false and you see it on the 7th page of a paper. Oh, we're
right,
sorry, it was wrong. It does no good at this late of a stage. So
yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I mean, it's nice. Thank you, appreciated. maybe people will recognize what a genius of Paul Brown was a little bit more than they did before. But you know, it's been since 1964, folks. It's not going to change the narrative about the Cleveland Browns. One other thing, Joe Flacco, people in our premium forums have known for a while that there were back channel conversations going on with Joe Flacco. It's now sort of public knowledge that it's now in the open. Fred, I'm really cynical about a Joe Flacco return to the Browns, that he will be able to repeat what he did a couple of years ago. But do you think that they can get the band back together and still play some rock and roll here with Joe Flacco?
Well, listen, it was about the most fun, and that's a low bar that I've had covering this team since
Mm-hmm.
'99. Um, was that 5 6 week stretch that came to a thud in the playoffs. I mean, they're we're starting to believe that maybe this could be the most crazy run, thinking to get made the playoffs and he was going to lead
Yeah.
them to the Super Bowl, but it crashed at the end. But no, with that said, he's now 2 years older. Um, if you're going to reboot the quarterback room, you know, you might as well maybe you see what you got with Kenny Pickett. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wrote about the other day. I think he'd be a great mentor and all that, and he'd probably be, somebody that would fit in well. I'm not opposed to it, but at this point, I just think you have to kind of hope you can figure out to get Kirk Cousins here, unless you're just really not going to be serious this year trying to win. Because I
Mm-hmm.
just don't know how you can expect Kenny Pickett to be the Sam Darnold 2.0. That's almost like what they're hoping will happen.
Yeah. And we all know about hope and strategies and all that sort of stuff. Last slide. The owners failed to nuke the tush push. Fred, I'm not a fan of the tush push, as you may have heard on this program. I consider it rugby. I think it eliminates tough strategic decisions that coaches have to make on fourth and short. And I like to see those decisions about pass or run or whatever on fourth down. It increases the tension. This, eliminates the tension because it's so statistically successful. What's your opinion on it? I've given mine.
I thought you wanted somebody to push your tush.
No, no, actually, no,
Okay.
no. I don't
I
like push
don't
push
like
at
it.
all.
I don't like the play. I mean, yeah, I just like it's it's predictable, but I don't if you got 11 bodies pushing one way, I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems it is. It's every other play. It's kind of it's almost with the it's not as bad. It's more football. But think about this with the kicker and field goal. These big guys battle for 59 minutes and 59 seconds, and some little 110-pound guy comes out and kicks a ball, and he's the hero. It's like
Right,
it never made sense to me is why the field goal or a kicker is so important in the game. Just eliminate that, and you have to go for two every time, and that kind of stuff.
right,
And
right.
field goals, kicking extra points, stuff like that. This is a different game too.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page with this. If I want to watch rugby, I'd go watch rugby, but I don't. So, all right. So I tell you what, let's talk about our friends from Core Home Fitness. They would certainly help with the tush pushing if you needed a little bit of bulk and strength to push a tush. They make the world's best adjustable dumbbells. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You've heard me talk about them over the course of the last year or so. Everybody who's anybody who reviews these sort of things say that these are the best adjustable dumbbells. Well, Core Home Fitness does more than that. Core Home Fitness makes the racks, the incline benches, all kinds of other health equipment. They also have some great videos on their site, which you can watch and learn how to use their equipment better and how to get healthy something I need to do. So I'm going to visit corehomefitness.com sometime over the course of the next week, check in on my friends there. And we appreciate their support, and we appreciate your support of our friends at corehomefitness.com. All right, let's get on to some of the questions that have piled up here. First one comes from Kelly Black, and we sort of addressed this earlier, but wants to know how long Watson will remain on the roster. Our opinion here being we're sort of stuck with him this year. He's going to be injured, but maybe next year they move on, right, Fred?
Yeah, I mean, that was the question, when they're going to cut him or whatever. Well, they would if they could. It's the same reason why the Browns couldn't trade Myles Garrett. Everybody's going, well, trade him. You can't trade him because of his contract and the dead
Right,
cap. We've went through this so much that I think it's up to about 119 million. If they cut him today, you have a salary cap now, I think, of 270 something. Think about that. 119 million will be taken up by one guy, and you got
right,
52 others. This is why they're not really that aggressive in free agency, because they don't have the money on this. Not that Haslam doesn't have the money, but they don't
mm-hmm.
have anywhere to put it with the salary cap constraints. The
Right,
NFL has a hard salary cap that you have to always stay under it. And so that's why you hear them restructuring guys, but there's only so many guys you can restructure. And Jack just did an article about how the Browns could fit Kirk Cousins' contract in, because the way they restructure, they can, restructure Denzel Ward, Ethan Posick, and then they get under so they could accommodate the Cousins contract. So that's why Deshaun Watson's on the roster. As long as he's on the injury list, he doesn't even take up a roster spot, though. And if he's on the injury list all year, it's my understanding that the Browns would get salary cap relief to some degree, but they would also collect on insurance policy, which almost
mm-hmm.
covers a year, like 44 million out of his 46 million. So, I highly doubt if he would come back off the injured list this year.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, he's not going to play, so I don't know. We saw guys, that could have probably played, and they just left him on the injured list all year, this year, rather than take up a roster spot. So I'd be
Mm-hmm.
surprised if he was still on the team this time next year.
Yeah, I would be surprised as well. Question from, or comment from Gregory H., which I just removed, basically saying that we should be, that it's ridiculous that we have not re signed Nick Chubb. Draft a guy, re sign Nick Chubb. That's the path. Before this show on Browns 3D, Jeff Lloyd does an excellent job on that program. He said that he thinks that the Cleveland Browns will have to replace 9 out of 11 starters on offense by 2026. That Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku will be the only two that are left. Do you think it's that extensive, Fred? Do you think that the Cleveland Browns are going to need to replace practically their entire offensive line, their running back, their quarterback, other wide receivers?
No, not to that. I think Cedric Tillman, they feel real good about him as a starting wide receiver, opposite Jeudy.
Mm-hmm.
I think they feel pretty good about DeJuan Jones as being one of their starters on the offensive line. But depends on the rest of them. Depends on if they feel Zach Zinner's ready to go and Luke Whippler's ready to go. If they have, they got Tevin Jenkins, kind of a younger guy. If they feel they have guys in line to take over, they can do so. But I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that they would have to. That's in your succession planning. Is you hope you draft guys that can take their places. But as we've seen, they don't always turn out to be as good as what they were hoping they'd be. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I don't know exactly. That's why this draft is so big for not only this year but for the future. You got 10 picks. You need to, especially those top 5 in the first 104, you got to come out of there with, 5 starters. Not
Yeah.
necessarily this year, but you want to have some impact players come out of there. And
Absolutely.
especially for next year, you know, depending on which way you go, in the draft. But, as I looked at the top 50, there's some positions that are really deeper than others, like edge rusher and
Hmm.
tight end and running back. Those are areas that the Browns have needs. And so I think they can address, but you got to get them right. You got to get, you got to hit on these guys. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's the whole idea. There's no question they are saddled because of the Watson, contract. But if they can dig themselves out in the draft here and get some, infuse some young talent, especially at skill positions, then I don't think they'll have to reboot and start all over next year.
I am answering Greg H right now, who wanted to know if I intended to remove his comment. I did not. It was accidental. I screw things up with regularity here. I'm a guitar player. 22 asks, how many wins does this team need to get for Barry and Stefanski to keep their jobs? I'm seeing extremely early Vegas lines that put the over/under win total at 4.5. That's not real encouraging, Fred. But do you think they can survive a 5-win season, 4 or 5 win season this year?
Well, from Haslam's comments, I can. Now, I know he's very emotional, but I think he's calmed down. I think that they've talked through this, and I think he's assured them, whatever we got to do to get it right, let's not force it. And I'm not saying that they're going to use that to try to tank,
Mm,
but I think that they they don't feel like there's a gun, so to say, to their head that they have to win so many games, and they might not force. He could have very well said, "Look, we're not gonna. You don't need to force taking a quarterback with a second pick just because you feel like you have to win this year. We
mm-hmm.
want to be competitive. We want to win, but I want you to do this right." Something like
Right.
that. So no, I mean, he has not given any indication that he is on the cusp of firing any of those guys.
No.
They were 3 and
No.
14. There was guys fired that had better records than that. And he is trying to go the opposite of what he did when he started his career when they were. I mean, he fired Chudzinski with 4 wins, in
Right.
his 1 year. And so, and I think Pettin might have got fired with a 7 win season. So the thing is, I just think that he feels like he doesn't want to go through that again. And I think he's trying to do as much as he can to make it work because on paper it looks good. A young coach, a young GM, been together now 5 years. They're going to get this right. They're going to figure it out. I mean, the Steelers, you know, even though they're not getting past the 9 win level, they make the playoffs, but they're not contemplating firing Tomlin because they feel confident that he's the same coach. He just needs better players and he
Mm-hmm.
needs a quarterback, and then they'll win again. And so
Right.
I think that's what they're trying to do is keep continuity. And the alternative is firing. Very rarely does it immediately help. You kind of start all over again, and we see this over and over. We saw it right here with the Browns, that
Right.
the shiny object always isn't much greater.
And the Browns have been grasping for shiny objects for the last 25 years and failing to grab them. Kelly Black says there's some noise around Tyler Shook. Can you see the Browns drafting a guy who's already 26 or 27 years old? Um, we went through the Brandon Whedon experience together, Fred. Do you see them going down that direction?
I don't, because I know the Browns are big in analytics and they have guardrails. And I don't think Andrew Berry would have drafted Brandon Whedon. Um, and I have to think that, they skew more towards the 20-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
like the David Njoku's that they figure will grow more. And a guy like Njoku now is ninth year and he's what, 28, so no, I really personally I don't, unless they feel that, boy, he's just sitting there and he could come right in and start. Um, but I really don't think he's one of the guys that they're considering. I think they've done the private workouts with the four, Milrow and Dart and
Mm-hmm.
Sanders and Ward, and brought them in. I think, those are guys they're seriously looking at trying to hone in on. Now, Shook could be a guy that, could be an outlier, same way that a Will Howard, some of these other guys, but I think they're more down the road,
Mm-hmm.
not guys they're looking to take with the first two picks.
Exactly. And they're showing up on some mock draft, for what they're worth. With Tyler being taken, pick 33. And I just don't see it, Fred. I don't think you do either. Um, let's go to Fumble 13. Fumbles 13 asked, would 1985 ish football upset you guys? I love smash mouth, grind the clock, beat the hell out of the other team, and play great D. Remember the Chicago Bears from around that time? They were scary back in those days in 1985. But would that upset you, Fred, or do you think that type of football doesn't belong these
I like
days?
Ackenbiner, and if you followed the OBR and followed me over the years when they had Nick Chubb in his prime and Kareem Hunt in his prime, I was pounding the table for, why don't you run two running backs together?
Mm-hmm.
One block, both of them were good blockers. Chubb block for Hunt and Hunt block for Chubb, and just pound the ball. But Stefanski, would use them both, but one at a time. Very rarely did he have them out there together. And I love that. And especially if you're not
Mm-hmm.
sure about the quarterback, your best friend would be a running game. Really
Exactly.
ramp up the running game. If your offensive line's your strength right now of your team, why not get a back or two and just pound the ball? And especially if it's a rookie quarterback, that helps. If it's an average quarterback, if it's Kenny Pickett or somebody like that, it helps. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd be all for that. I mean, these things are cyclical. It seems like, whatever one team does, everybody does. When everybody's throwing, everybody else is throwing. Why not trend set and go back and, play ball control the clock, run the ball,
Mm-hmm.
stop the run. That's always been kind of the mantra of winning football, and I still think it can work. So, when I look at this draft, I think that I'd be a proponent to get definitely one top back, but I'd even get two. I'd even get somebody that's left over, maybe, in the fifth, sixth round, but
Yeah.
take one higher up in the third round or somewhere where you can get a playmaking back and build around that for now and in the future.
Yeah. This draft is deep enough at the position that you can still find value early on day three. That's for sure. Question from Jeffrey Champion. He asks, how far away do you think Jalen Milrow is as a passer? Well, the Browns have been saying a lot of nice things about Jalen Milrow and Jackson Dart and how they've adapted, how they've grown during the offseason. Nothing but positives I've heard from Jalen Milrow now that the season is over and he's into the offseason. A lot of positive press for him.
Yeah, I don't know what he's clearly not ready from the passing department. I mean, in fairness, I still am hard to believe that Lamar Jackson's been like a two-time MVP. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at him as totally a runner, and he still has that kind of a funky throwing motion, but he's learned and figured it out. I mean, if they feel, I mean, the guy's got a 4.37 40. I mean, he's definitely what, no matter what they say, he's a running threat first. But that's where it comes back. If you really like the guy, then go find a way to get Kirk Cousins so you can have a quarterback play right now for a year or two and then develop this guy. Same way with Jackson Dart. But if not, I don't see how you could take Milrow and then not really have any quarterback. And you don't want to throw him out there. That means in this situation, you're forced to go get Carson Wentz or Joe Flacco, and you got Kenny Pickett. Those are your choices until a Milrow's ready. And so
Right.
that's why I can't see him making a lot of sense unless he's just there and they take him as a developmental guy. And I think that's what the Steelers, if they like him, that's what they would do is play
Right.
Rodgers this year, and then they would hope to turn it over to him the next year.
Yeah.
Who knows what they think of Jackson Dart? Is he a developmental guy as well, or is that somebody you think could play still as a rookie? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm not an expert, in all that, but he doesn't look like a great quarterback, at least in a passing game. He wasn't in college, and I don't know how you can expect him to even be better in the NFL right now. Now, will
Right.
it take him a year, two? Will he ever get there? I think he's got the talent physically, so somebody's going to take him and probably take him higher than he should go.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look at Lamar Jackson. Nobody talked about him. That year they talked about four quarterbacks, and he wasn't one of them. And he got
I
picked
remember that.
32nd. You
Stupid
know,
Ravens. Horrible.
yep.
Horrible that Baltimore walked into that. But Milrow, when I saw him play last year, the games I saw at least, and I didn't see some of his better ones, did not impress me. Hearing a lot of positive press during this offseason, I can't believe that he's made that sort of jump where he's going to be able to play in his first year or so. So I think he's at least a couple of years away, Jeffrey, based on everything I saw when during the regular season. Last question. This comes from 4411-825. He says, absolutely play Mike Fratello ball when you don't have premium players on offense. Browns need a good game manager who doesn't turn the ball over. This is my objection to Flacco right here, Fred, because Flacco throws a lot of picks, and we didn't see it during that 5-game run, but we did see it against Houston as he threw a couple of pick sixes. I think the Browns, unless they think they can change his tendencies developed over the last 20 years, Flacco to me is not that game manager. I don't know what you think.
Well, that's why I wrote a story about Kenny Pickett. I mean, he has 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, but I was reading a story that he had some of the lowest turnover tendencies, in the number of throws he was making. And
Mm-hmm.
so that could very well be the reason he's here, to be a game manager, to not throw the ball, take any risk, and and try to manage the clock and win with defense, special teams. So
Yep.
we'll see.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea, of controlling the clock with a running game.
Yep. Let's control the clock with the running game, play out some awesome defense, and keep the ball safe. That would be a way to win a few games next year. We'll see if they do it. Fred, thank you as always for your time and your wisdom during the course of the show. I want to thank everybody who's in our chat room. As always, it's great interaction in our chat room. I love seeing the comments come scrolling by, and appreciate all the chatter that we had today and all the questions that we had. So, Fred and I will be back here again next Wednesday night. It will be our final performance. I believe next 7 will be here on the 9th and then the 16th, and then we won't be here on the 23rd because we're going to run a special program that night. So a couple more shows before the draft, Fred. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you all next Wednesday.
All right. See you. Thanks for checking in.